I'm Gary Anderson, and I'm going to start out with some comments after we are welcomed to campus and to the Religious Studies program by Dr. Phil Barlow. So we'll turn the time over to Phil now, and then we'll have some housekeeping, and then we'll be underway. Thanks, Phil. Again, we're glad to have you here. Here's some housekeeping things that we need to address. If you attended our October conference, we have the proceedings volumes here available, and there they are. And pick one up. We'll keep track of that list so that we can get them out to everyone who registered for that conference. But if you're here, it'll save us some postage. They are available for those who weren't able to attend at $20 a piece. Also, again, to reiterate, if you want us on the mailing list, please make sure that you sign on that sheet as it goes around. Also, you can check our website at templestudies.org. That's just one. Those two words are stuck together as they often are in website addresses, templestudies.org. And you could actually register that way if you want to just send an email through that website. We'll put you on the mailing list. But also, we have all of the videos from our last conference up and available. So if you want to see what transpired, I got a call today from someone who just inadvertently said, "Gosh, what else is going on with your group?" He said, "I've just watched all of those videos on the website." One of his friends sent it to him and said he'd enjoyed it very much. So it is getting out somehow. As far as questions to the panel are concerned, we'll do them the same way we did last time. We've been passing out these white cards as we prepare for the panel discussions. If you'll we'll make sure that those questions are handed in to Jack Welch so that he can help us sort through those and perhaps make our interactions a little more organized. With that in mind, what I want to do is just introduce us now to this concept of Enoch and the temple. I'll try to make this fairly basic, just so that we're all at least at a beginning point. Many of you I know are further along than that, but I want to just give you some sense of what we're talking about when we talk about temple studies. In my introduction to our last symposium, I talked about this briefly. I'll just very briefly touch on that, and then I'm going to use some of Jack Welch's paper that he presented there to explain it a little bit more, just to give context for our discussion today. And a lot of where we're coming from comes from Margaret Barker, and those of you who attended our conference last fall, she was here, and she talked about the idea that the Old and New Testaments fundamentally are influenced by the temple and its worship. The temple that she's talking about primarily is the first temple, and that's characterized as the temple in effect prior to the Babylonian exile. So we're talking about 600 BC and earlier. In her words, she says you really can't. Her thesis is that you really can't understand the Old and New Testaments, particularly the Old Testament as it relates to the teachings there, unless you understand the temple. And it's hard to understand the relationship of the New Testament to the Old Testament unless you understand, in her mind, that the people of the New Testament were actually anticipating what had been predicted in the first temple. Now let me just shift gears a little bit and put it in a little more scholarly language. Again, thanks to Jack Welch for defining in his presentation what is temple theology, and I'm just going to hit some high points in the interest of time. Temple theology is related to the schools of thought that emphasize the role of ritual in the development of religious narratives and beliefs. Ritual and liturgy are the kinds of things that, for LDS people, you would find primarily in the temple. For a person like Lawrence Hemming, who was one of our visitors last fall, who's a Catholic, liturgy for him is found in his worship in the Mass and in the various ceremonies that and worship services that the Catholics participate in. Temple theology celebrates what can be known or represented about God, his attributes, and his manifestations as they are embodied in the signs, symbols, and patterns of religious practices, especially as they occur in relationships, shared emotions, and communications in places of contact, of ritual instruction, and in human responses of thanks, praise, and covenant making, all of which serve the purposes of transforming mankind, of making atonement efficacious, and of binding man to God for purposes of protection, healing, blessing, and ultimate exaltation. Temple theology has the potential to recover and project the fullness of the past, and thus is well positioned to give bearings in answering the so-called terrible questions of where we came from, why we are here, and where we are going. Things as they were, as they are, and as they will be. Temple theology strives to elucidate the thought patterns and spiritual experiences that come through the repetition of sacred ordinances in order to develop habits of body and soul that emulate and imitate the character and behavior of God. Temple theology is more interested in what God does and what God asks us to do than just in who God is or what is God's nature. Religious rituals typically enact ceremonies of transformation that take participants from one state, pass them through a liminal state, and then elevate them to a higher realm. In the temple, God appears, speaks, has a plan, loves, and wants to achieve a fullness of joy as universally as possible. That's a very brief introduction, and I'm sure you'll have to think through that a little bit. But the idea here is to give context to what we'll be talking about today. We're going to now introduce or have Jared Ludlow, Dr. Ludlow from BYU, who is a member of what's called the Enoch Seminar. That is a group of scholars organized in about 2000, I believe, that have a focus on the study of Enoch. And for those of you who are LDS, the characterization of the book of Enoch that we have, or what we characterize as the book of Enoch, is found in Moses chapters 6 and 7 of our book of Moses and the Pearl of Great Price. And that is part of what we're going to be talking about today with our LDS scholars. Dr. Ludlow is going to introduce our eminent speaker here, and he'll, I'm sure, give us the information that we'll need to understand Dr. Nicholsburg's background and what he's written and the importance of his work. So I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Ludlow. Thank you very much.